The vault opens. Welcome back. I am the archivist. Every week I open a file that was never meant to be found. Tonight, we open another one. The file reads, 7 people who faked their own death. Classified. There is a fantasy that most people have had at some point in their lives. To disappear. To walk away from everything. To let the world believe you are gone. And start over somewhere else. Most people keep it as a fantasy, but some people actually try it. They stage accidents, they fake bodies, they create elaborate lies, they leave their entire lives behind, and they almost get away with it. Almost. Tonight, the archivist opens 7 files, 7 people who tried to vanish from the face of the earth, and 7 reasons why it never works. Case 1. John Darwin, 2002, England. John Darwin was a prison officer drowning in debt. His finances were collapsing. His future looked impossible. So he made a decision that would change everything. He paddled out into the North Sea in a canoe and never came back. His wife Anne reported him missing. A search was launched. His canoe was found. John Darwin was declared dead. His wife collected the life insurance, and John Darwin quietly moved back into his own house, through a secret door connecting his house to the one next door. For 5 years, he lived hidden, in secret, while his wife told their sons their father was dead, while his sons grieved, while the world moved on. In 2007, John Darwin walked into a London police station and told them he was alive. He claimed he had amnesia. Nobody believed him. A photograph was later found on Google Street View showing John and Anne Darwin together in Panama during the years he was supposedly dead. Both were arrested. Both went to prison. His sons did not speak to their mother for years. The debt that started everything was never fully resolved. Case 2. Frank Ahern, not a faker himself, but the man who helped people disappear. For years, Frank Ahern ran a business helping people vanish. He knew every trick, every method, every way to create a new identity and walk away from your old life. And from watching hundreds of people try to disappear, he learned one thing above all else. Nobody actually succeeds, because the one thing you cannot escape is yourself. People always make contact with someone from their old life. Always. One phone call, one email, one moment of weakness, and it is over. The archivist notes this not as a case of faking death, but as evidence from the man who knew more about disappearing than anyone alive. It cannot be done perfectly, not forever. Case 3. Olivia Newton-John's boyfriend, 2005. Patrick McDermott was the boyfriend of famous singer Olivia Newton-John. He went on an overnight fishing trip off the California coast and vanished. A Coast Guard investigation found no body, no definitive evidence of death. He was declared legally dead in 2008, and then reports began emerging. Sightings in Mexico. A woman who claimed she had lived with him in a small Mexican town. Investigators hired by a TV show tracked him down, found evidence he was alive, living quietly under a different name. Patrick McDermott has never been officially confirmed alive or dead. His case remains one of the most mysterious disappearances in modern American history. The file remains open. Case 4. Samuel Israel III, 2008. Samuel Israel III was a hedge fund manager who had defrauded investors of over $450 million. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. On the day he was supposed to report to prison, his car was found abandoned on a bridge over the Hudson River. The word Suicide was written in dust on the hood of the car. Samuel Israel had vanished. Investigators immediately suspected he had faked his death. A massive manhunt began, and 47 days later, Samuel Israel turned himself in. He had been living in a motorhome in Massachusetts, hiding, running out of money, running out of options. He later admitted the plan had never really worked. He was recognized everywhere he went. He could not use his real identity. He could not use credit cards. He was completely alone. He described those 47 days as the worst of his life. Worse than facing prison. He went to prison anyway, with additional time added for the escape. Case 5, Benny Wint, a man who faked his death to avoid child support payments. He staged a drowning, collected insurance money, and started a new life in another state. For 20 years, he lived as a different person, paid no child support, had no contact with his children, and then his daughter, now an adult, began searching for him. She hired a private investigator and found him, alive, living under a different name, working a regular job. He was arrested, charged with fraud and failure to pay child support. He owed over $100,000 in unpaid support payments. His children refused to meet him. He went to prison, and when he got out, the debt was still waiting for him. Case 6, Alan Abel, 1980. Alan Abel was a famous American prankster and satirist. He had spent his career pulling elaborate hoaxes on the American media, and in 1980 he pulled his greatest hoax of all. He faked his own death. His wife called the New York Times, told them Alan Abel had died of a heart attack in Utah. The New York Times published his obituary. And then Alan Abel held a press conference to announce he was alive. It had all been a joke, a prank, a demonstration of how easily the media could be fooled. The New York Times was furious. They had published a false obituary. Alan Abel laughed. He later said it was the most fun he had ever had. The archivist notes, this is the only case in tonight's file where faking death worked exactly as planned, because the plan was never to actually disappear, only to prove a point. Case 7, Marcus Schrenker, 2009. Marcus Schrenker was a financial advisor facing fraud charges. He was about to lose everything, his business, his home, his reputation. So he came up with a plan. He got into his small private plane over Alabama, sent a fake distress call claiming the windshield had imploded and he was bleeding profusely. Then he put the plane on autopilot and parachuted out. The empty plane flew on for hundreds of miles before crashing into a swamp in Florida. Investigators initially believed there might be a body in the wreckage. There was none. A massive search began, and Marcus Schrenker was found days later in a tent in a Florida campground, injured from the parachute jump, cold, alone. He had emailed a friend before the jump asking him to look after his motorcycle. That email led investigators directly to him. He was arrested, charged with destruction of aircraft and securities fraud. He received a prison sentence of over 10 years. His plan, which he had clearly thought through carefully, unraveled because of one email about a motorcycle. Before the archivist closes this file, one final entry. Every single person in tonight's file had one thing in common. They all believed they were smart enough to disappear forever. They had all thought about it carefully, planned it, executed it, and every single one of them failed, because faking your death requires one impossible thing. It requires you to stop being yourself, to never contact anyone you love, to never go anywhere familiar, to live in complete isolation from everything that makes you who you are, forever. And nobody can do that. Not forever. The file is closing, but before it does, the archivist asks you one question. If you had to disappear tomorrow, how long do you think you could actually last? Think about that. The vault closes for now. If you are new here, subscribe. Every file we open is one they never wanted you to read. I will see you in the next vault.